Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Israel is telling everyone in North Gaza, about 1.1 million people, to relocate to the south of the Strip in the next 24 hours. An Israeli Defense Forces spokesman said the military knew it would take longer than that to move everyone, but blamed Hamas for telling people to ignore the order. Israel has massed hundreds of thousands of soldiers on the border ahead of an expected ground offensive into the densely populated enclave. Analysts believe any ground invasion would be catastrophic for Gazan civilians.
You can't have a ground invasion of one of the most technologically sophisticated armies in the world into one of the most densely populated areas in the world, where they have nowhere to go, except to expect that there's going to be tremendous civilian casualties. It would look like a complete catastrophe. It would look like a civilian humanitarian disaster. This is the sort of language that is being used by the United Nations and rights groups around the world. I think the language isn't alarmist. I think the language is entirely appropriate, because I think that's exactly what we're going to get. We're talking about 1.1 million people, nearly all of whom are civilians, being forced to relocate from one of the most densely populated areas in the world, from one part of that territory down south in the space of 24 hours. I don't think that's possible.
The EU is investigating Elon Musk's X over the possible spread of terrorist and violent content and hate speech after Hamas's attack on Israel. The investigation, the first under the EU's new tech rules, will also look at the way complaints are handled. X, formerly known as Twitter, said it had removed hundreds of Hamas-affiliated accounts from the platform. TikTok and Meta have also been warned by the EU for not doing enough to tackle disinformation. A teacher has been killed and 2 people have been seriously injured in a knife attack at a school in France. Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin said the attack happened at the Gambetta High School in the northern city of Arras. Local officials say the attacker has been arrested. Police say the attacker shouted Allah Akbar, or God is greatest, during the attack. The attacker is believed to be in his 20s. 7 people have died after a crowded minivan driven by a suspected people smuggler overturned. That's according to German police. More than 20 migrants, including some children, are thought to have been in the van. The driver attempted to evade police at a road check before losing control near Ampfing in Bavaria. The accident happened amid a rise in people smuggling, which has led to several Central and Eastern European countries to impose border checks. 8 UN peacekeepers have been detained over sex abuse claims in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The 8 peacekeepers were deployed in Beni in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo and were arrested in connection with alleged sexual exploitation and violence. All belong to the South African contingent of the UN force and may be involved in what internal reports describe as a systematic, widespread violation of UN rules. Burkina Faso's military leaders have signed a deal with Russia to build a nuclear power plant to increase electricity supplies. It is the junta's latest move to align itself with Russia after falling out with most of its Western partners. The junta has turned to Russia for economic and military support since it seized power last year. Burkina Faso is one of the least electrified countries globally, with only 21% of people connected to power. And 5 sports, including cricket and flag football, proposed for inclusion at the Los Angeles 2028 Olympics, have been approved by the International Olympic Committee Executive Board. Organisers of the LA 2028 Games said this week they wanted cricket, flag football, lacrosse, squash and baseball, softball added to the event. Each host city, under IOC rules approved a few years ago, can request the inclusion of several sports for their edition of the Games. The IOC session, starting on Sunday, will now have to rubber stamp the board's recommendations. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.